Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Friends Validator YouTube channel. If this is your first video, I'm your host, Jure Malbum, and this show is up that brings together crypto pioneers, exciting projects, and a thriving community. And today we are talking about EigenLayer, of course, because the highly anticipated token launch finally took place. And this is a rather spontaneous episode with Mara from the DeFi Dojo. As you guys know, DeFi Dojo and Friends Validator with a co-branded validator, or operator better said, on top of EigenLayer. This is the reason why we are sitting here. With that being said, Mara, thank you so much for joining on a very spontaneous note.
Yeah, super happy to be here. Thank you so much, Yuri. And it's always a pleasure to hang out with friends and the whole Friends Validator community.
Yes, the pleasure is mine. And let's dive straight into it. So as you guys might have seen it, we already uploaded another video that explained EigenLayer on a high level. We also posted this video very shortly before the launch. So I highly recommend you guys to check out that first, because this is like kind of the base video that breaks everything down. But if you're already relatively familiar with EigenLayer, you can just stay with us. But yeah, so let's start at the very beginning. So EigenLayer was like one of the most anticipated launches of this year. Now the Eigen token is finally here after airdrop season 2. So yeah, what are like your general thoughts on that, Mara? Are you excited? Are you a little bit pessimistic because the market sentiment isn't that strong right now? So yeah, where's your overall mind right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think restaking has taken DeFi by storm. Just to give people perspective, right? So all of DeFi is about 80, billion in TVL. We have a lot of different kind of categories in DeFi, but restaking over the last year has really shot up and, is the fifth largest kind of like category within DeFi, and liquid restaking obviously is very big as well. But within restaking, we really do just have kind of one king of the hill, so to speak. EigenLayer, $12 billion in TVL. We do see other upstarts. We see Symbiotic, we see Karak, we see Pel, we see others, but EigenLayer is still squarely the kind of king of restaking, having really popularized what's going on that front. And yeah, this is big news. People have been farming EigenLayer for at least a year, some folks even much longer than a year. And I think we're finally going to kind of see things going into action. So just to kind of clarify for folks, what is the big news and what's happening? On September 30th at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the token will be transferable. Maybe those of you who are kind of like more familiar with Eigen will know that there was a season 1, which ended on March 15th. You could then claim your tokens and restake those tokens. But they were not transferable. You couldn't go and sell them. You couldn't go and buy. You couldn't do anything with them besides kind of work within the walled garden that was already in EigenLayer. Then there was a season 2 that was from March 15th until August 15th. And those tokens are now claimable. But the really big news is all of the tokens from season 1 and from season 2 and moving forward will now be claimable, will now be transferable, which also means you could send them to someone else. You could sell them, you could send them to a SEX, you could stake them. There's all sorts of kind of really interesting options that are coming up right now.
Now let's talk a little bit about what you can actually do with the EigenLayer token. So the Eigen token is not only here for governance, and I think this is what a lot of people find very hard to understand. So in the current proof of stake world, you have, for example, Solana, and you can stake Solana in order to secure the Solana blockchain itself. But with this Sol, you can only verify very straightforward and mathematical, easy to prove issues in that sense. So when you stake Sol, you secure the blockchain by basically participating in verifying these transactions. And as soon as you see a market participant that, for example, double signs a transaction or something very significant and severely, then this is where the Sol token basically is the security boundary that slashes the soul of the people who did that and staked their soul. Now, with EigenLayer, we go a couple of steps further. So can we talk a little bit about this intersubjectively attributable faults that that EigenLayer is talking about, in a direction that there are also issues that are a little bit more subjective, as the name implies, and less crystal clear. So faults where you need like more kind of a broad-based agreement among all participants and specifically operators and validators. So can you talk a little bit? So if I'm 5 years old, what would you say is like the major difference between these super straightforward faults that you can basically solve by just staking or restaking ETH, whereas you have the EigenLayer token that comes into play for intersubjectively attributable faults?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super interesting concept, and I think it sounds incredibly complicated. Intersubjective work token is a pretty unapproachable word or phrase, but I think when it comes down to it, it's actually relatively easy to understand. And I think you started to explain it pretty well there, Yuri. First of all, in a blockchain, there are mathematical parameter-based things that we can all agree on. It's kind of like the laws of the land, when it's very kind of clear, validator signed twice, they should be slashed. Or if there are requirements for voting, how many times did they vote? If it's a yes or a no, it really works well kind of on these binaries, whether it be a Cosmos chain, an ETH chain, Solana chain, whatever. You have these kind of like slashable events, which are a binary. Did something happen? Yes or no? Now, as we all know, the world is not black and white. There are gray zones when it comes to everything. And that's, for example, like why we have, interpretations. We have judges that interpret things. We have like laws that are kind of harder to understand. And that's really where when EigenLayer can kind of step in, when there is something that is happening within their ecosystem, where it is not black and white, it is not a binary yes or no, but there is some discussion that has to happen. Like I think, an easy example of this might be like sometimes on Polymarket, you have, which is like a prediction market. You can have times when it's very clear, like, there's a bet on did someone win an election and did someone lose an election? Most of the time that's very clear. And like, we can just like settle and be like, okay, election was won. This goes to this other person, right? There are times when like there's a bet and it's like a little bit like less clear, right? When like, there's some kind of like, folks who are having a disagreement or the rules of the law were not very clear. And that's when this intersubjective work token can kind of step in, and the community as a whole, it's this kind of like, social layer above EigenLayer, which can allow people to help make these more nuanced, these more difficult decisions. Now, with a bunch of AVSs, this is super important, right? Like the reason we're having all these restaked assets is so that people can rent different economic security. And they're going to start having these slashing events, which say, under this set of circumstances, restakers are going to get slashed, or this operator will get slashed. But a lot of these AVSs are doing very interesting things. Like they're doing an oracle, right? Or they're doing a bridge, or they're doing security, or all sorts of different stuff that these AVSs are doing. And so when there are times when it is not a parameter that is going into the staking, but it's this kind of like subjective decision, this like social element that needs to be discussed and having kind of harmony and agreeing on, that's when the EigenLayer token steps in. And that's when you have this voting that will start happening in the future with the EigenLayer token. So I think it's pretty interesting. I think that like EigenLayer really is kind of building out more of an ecosystem around what you can do, with the token. As you mentioned, there's governance. Most tokens have governance attached to it. There's this intersubjective side of things that's very new. But then there's also restaking of it. So for example, EigenLayer created their own data availability layer, and the EigenLayer token is what is supporting that data availability layer. So we're kind of seeing more and more use cases coming out. And this is one of the more hyped tokens of at least the last 6 months, maybe in the last year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as the token launches over the next few hours.
Yeah, 100% agree. And let's maybe talk a little bit about the future and the outlook, because you mentioned the data availability layer, which is like an interesting concept, but I think this is yet to see how much the EigenDA will be used in the end of the day. What I find super interesting is we talked about how the Eigen token basically allows to provide kind of an infrastructure for developers to build more complex applications, or to be more specific, AVSs, because right now you can't build or launch so super complex AVSs, because you just have basically the ability to prove these super straightforward wrong or right questions, like did a validator or an operator double sign yes or no. But as soon as you mentioned a couple of examples, as soon as things become more tricky, this would be a problem for such an AVS to, have a platform that serves for more complex use cases. So what are basically your thoughts on that? So what kind of an ecosystem are we expecting here on EigenLayer? Like how much did this open the door for the EigenLayer ecosystem? So that would be very interesting for me to understand.
Absolutely. Well, this is a list of different operators that, AVSs that are operating on EigenLayer, and some kind of information about what they do. So, obviously we've already been talking about EigenDA. It's a data availability solution using dank sharding. It's, I think one of the competitors of this are things like Avail, things like Celestia, but this is built by the EigenLayer protocol themselves. All of the rest of these AVSs that are on this list are built by third parties. So we are starting to kind of really see this ecosystem getting built out. If we just go down the list here of like the tags of what these different things are, we can see that there are some pretty interesting things. eOracle, which is trying to kind of compete with, the chain links, the red stones of the world. Pretty interesting what they're doing over there with, as an Oracle, and kind of making sure that there's a lot of protection for the data that they're putting out there. You have Larange, which is doing ZK proofs, Witness Chain, which is doing DPEN, Larange Committees, which is a coprocessor, Hyperlane, which is doing interoperability and bridging, Cyber, which is a social layer, and so on and so on and so on, right? So we're really kind of seeing this ecosystem coming to root. I think that, none of these projects are live yet, but they are kind of like aggressively building towards this future where EigenLayer will have its own token. EigenLayer will have slashability, and the full kind of functionality comes out there. So it's exciting to see. And I think, in addition to what people have been kind of like doing with restaking their ETH and earning Eigen tokens and earning, all these different things, we're going to start actually seeing rewards being paid by these AVSs, which will be very interesting as well. How that works. There could easily be airdrops. We've already had a few. AltLayer, for example, which is a finality platform, already did an airdrop to people who had EigenLayer points. It's not hard to imagine that we'll see others of these AVSs doing airdrops as well to people who have been using the platform, or operators which are supporting their networks. So there's a lot of kind of really exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, I think the list says everything. But yet, I'm very, very interested in how these AVSs play out. So far, a lot of them are still theory, but do you have like any insights on the rollout phase here? So when will we see how many AVSs? And I think from there we can quickly talk about Symbiotic as well.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're, just to kind of reiterate for people, for those people who have been restaking their ETH in the March period, or in the period like before March, or from March until August, you can now, and you can go and you can claim your EigenLayer tokens. If you go to the EigenLayer Foundation Twitter, you should be able to find a link there. If you've been using LRTs, there's this great website which is called checkeigen.byzantine.fi, and you can enter your wallet address and you can see if you have any Eigen tokens from Kelp, from Swell, from Renzo, and the full kind of breakdown of different places that you might have EigenLayer tokens, including from the foundation itself. And then it has a link here which takes you to the different websites where you can go and claim that. So this is a great thing to do. I do think, it's also worthwhile kind of touching on what the next steps are going to be in the rollout of EigenLayer. So they had these first 2 seasons. Those have now completed. The token is going to be transferable as of the 31st, which is today, at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then the other big thing is we're now going to start seeing programmatic rewards. And what this means is we're going to have 4% of the total supply of Eigen distributed over this next period. And so that means that 3% of these rewards are going to be going to LST stakers. So people who are staking ETH, for example, with like an operator like the DeFi Dojo Friends Validator, people who are using a liquid staking platform or a liquid restaking platform. And then also notably, there's going to be staking of the Eigen token. So 1%, one of this 4% is going to be going to people who are locking up their EigenLayer token into the governance system, securing EigenDA, participating in this intersubjective system. They're going to also be earning EigenLayer rewards as well. There's been a lot of different estimates in terms of like what that might convert to on an APR side. But interestingly enough, I think it will likely be somewhere between about 5 and 9%, depending on exactly how many people lock up their EigenLayer tokens. We'll kind of have a better sense of that, but could be somewhere between 5 and 9%. So for those of you who are claiming and are planning on kind of being a long-term participant in the EigenLayer ecosystem, would highly recommend, checking out the DeFi Dojo and Friends operator. You can, once you claimed your EigenLayer tokens, you can go and you can stake them with the operator. There's about 73,000 Eigen tokens that have already been staked with the DeFi Dojo operator, and you'll be earning those rewards. Again, we don't know exactly what it's going to be, if it's going to be 5% or closer to 9%, but it'll be something kind of roughly within that range, hopefully.
Yes, and now that we have covered like most of the important stuff that came from EigenLayer, let's maybe also have a look at the competition, because obviously EigenLayer launched at a huge valuation right now. I mean, considering that EigenLayer is just that the EigenLayer token is now transferable for a very, very short time now. Like the valuation is just crazy, also driven by the fact that ASX injected $100 million. Obviously, in the beginning of the year, the expected valuation was much higher because the overall market sentiment was way more bullish. But maybe like like an outlook. So all of these applications, or like all of the AVSs, they also have the opportunity now to maybe look also into different ecosystems. And there's also Symbiotic in the pipeline. So you talked about how popular restaking has become in the DeFi world. So what do you expect over the course of the next couple of months? Will we see this huge fight between the different restaking providers? Let it be EigenLayer, or I think the most relevant one, the other one is Symbiotic. So what are your expectations here?
Yeah, it's super interesting. This is a token that has been massively hyped for a long time, right? People were expecting it to have, like a multi billion-dollar valuation. It seems like, for example, if we look here, this is not live trading. This is pre-market trading, just to be clear what everyone's like looking at here. This is pre-market trading of the token. You can see there was a massive amount of speculation. When this thing first launched, people were thinking it was me trading at $10 a token, which would have given it something like a $16 billion valuation. It kind of crashed down all the way to $2, which was kind of like the lows for EigenLayer. And it's already up 2x on this kind of pre-trading from there. I will just caveat that this is like very low liquidity, very low open interest, so we can't read into this too much. But what we are seeing right now is that EigenLayer is roughly trading at like a $6.5 billion valuation. So I think we've kind of seeing a resurgence around restaking. It's going to be very interesting to see at what level EigenLayer launches. Obviously, there's been a ton of people farming this for a very long period of time. And so there's probably going to be a lot of folks who are looking to actualize those yields on their ETH. So I would not be surprised if we saw a dump down in the price of Eigen. You know, who knows how far it goes? Maybe it goes to $3, maybe it goes to 2, maybe it goes even lower. I have no idea. But I would also not be surprised if we see something like a V-shaped recovery where it goes down and down and down, you know, that kind of classic airdrop fractal, and then it pops back up. I do think that this is a token that could, you know, have a lot of interest from a lot of people if we continue to kind of have positive market sentiment. So, you know, the price of EigenLayer definitely affects the way people are going to be considering the others, right? So we already talked about EigenLayer has $12 billion in a sector that has, you know, roughly $15 billion total. So like they make up the lion's share of this. Now, as you pointed out, we are seeing kind of more and more of these upstart protocols. Symbiotic, which is, you know, very much supported by Lido and by Paradigm, you know, really has been kind of like working to create an alternative solution to this. One that, you know, in some ways might be more friendly to liquid staking providers, might be more friendly to AVSs, having different functionalities. I'm certainly very bullish on both. As someone who spends a lot of time, you know, doing kind of like DeFi farming and thinking about these things, I would say that both protocols are very kind of interesting, and they are having different value propositions. There are others on this list, you know, and I won't kind of like point them out one by one, but it feels like there might be a handful of winners in the restaking space. You know, like this list has 10 restaking protocols. I think there's probably closer to 15 or 20. I don't think all of them will be around. I don't think all of them are going to be successful. You know, I think probably some of these other ones were just trying to kind of hop on the hype and like copy what EigenLayers and what others have been doing. And I don't think they necessarily will be, you know, successful in that. But I do think that obviously EigenLayer has brought something new and interesting. And I think Symbiotic has iterated on that and is also kind of like taking it into a slightly different direction, which could be very powerful as well. So I'm excited about both protocols. I definitely think that, you know, hopefully they will be the tokens that can kind of create new innovation and new incitement around our space, essentially.
Totally agree on that. And yeah, super stoked to see what's happening with the overall restaking ecosystem. Maybe there will be a winner takes it all scenario. Maybe there's also a scenario where we have like a couple of competitors, or maybe, and even though I'm a big fan of restaking, there's also still the possibility that all of what we have discussed and thought about in all of these super academic papers might not even work out. So at the end of the day, we're still in crypto. This is the fastest growing industry on planet Earth. So there's always some place for errors. And I think that's also very important to keep in mind when you interact with one of these applications. So kind of a friendly reminder what kind of industry that is. But yeah, as mentioned, super excited about EigenLayer's launch. I'm personally super excited about how these AVSs will play out, how much distribution they will get, how much revenue they will drive to the overall EigenLayer ecosystem, because this is also something that EigenLayer has to measure itself against too, right? So all of the AVSs actually have to drive a lot of revenue to the overall EigenLayer ecosystem in order to justify this valuation. So let's see what's happening on that front. And obviously, same goes for all of the competitors. With that being said, Mara, I think that was like a super straightforward episode to basically reflect on the successful launch, to touch base a little bit on what's next. This is what the episode was for, to discuss a little bit, you know, what's going to happen now. Will we see more competitors? And what's about to happen with the Eigen price since it launched at a relatively high valuation. So yeah, with that being said, Mara, thank you so much for joining, and I hope I see you soon on the show.
Thank you, Yuri. Bye.